Yo, what's popping about the final day for week one of the Countdown Cup with four whopping NA games, with actually a lot of them were very much rolls. But there was one really good one right in the middle, so make sure you stick around for that. And also, before I get into this, like this video, subscribe for more daily Overwatch League content. Comment down below and share this with anyone you think might enjoy this. Anyway, so starting off, the New York Excelsior against the Atlanta Reign, and this is just a roll for Atlanta, and that's kind of surprising in some regards because both of these teams beat Toronto 3-1. So you're like, oh, maybe there's some even close in power, but it's just not true. Toronto just sucked against New York, and they just suck in general, I guess, because Atlanta just hard rolls New York completely. So New York playing their guys, Yaki Flora, Kellen, Ho1, and Gang Ninja. They have Lansu J. He doesn't actually come out, though. Atlanta playing Venom, Speedily, Hawk, UV, and Vigilante. Ilios is a 2-0 for Atlanta. New York playing Tracer, Sombra, Ball on a Zen, with Atlanta playing Tracer, Echo, Diva on a Zen, and Wells just a straight up 100-0. Speedily's under some pressure on the Echo, but he's able to drift into the back line. He kills the New York supports, and from there, Atlanta cap, and they just keep New York in their spawn, basically. Yaki and Kellen just kind of chill way in the back and let their team die because he's not really getting a lot of impact there, either of them. And it just feels like they're just consistently waiting. Okay, we'll wait for our team to group up, but their team just keeps dying because of how aggressive Atlanta's being, and they just waste the entire round. Then we go over to Lighthouse. There's 196 for Atlanta, and Flora goes over to the Ash. And Atlanta, they just keep, they still have that aggression where they're pressuring the back line. They get a kill, they move over to the point and cap. But New York actually do get some fight wins, normally from Flora finding a pick on a Venom, and then it's a lot easier for their back line, and things like that. Or maybe Atlanta dive into a Nano Gang Ninja and he just cleans up there. But other than that, the only other noticeable thing is Hawk probably gets the first remet kill in Owl Season 5, which is always nice to see because I can't remember another one unless Kaluja ended up getting one in Stage 2, but I don't think he did. But yeah, so pretty much a wash there. Then we go to Kings Row, which is a 3-2 for Atlanta. And in this map, he gets the second Owl Season 5 rematch kill, and it also cancels EMP. So that is astounding, but that happens on the defense for Atlanta. So anyway, Atlanta playing still the Tracer, Echo, Diva on a Zen, but New York playing Winston now with the Ash. And for Atlanta's offense, they basically just pressure off the high ground with Echo and Diva, and it doesn't work the first time. They come again after Venom finds a nice stick on the Kellen to open up the point. They cap out pretty easily. New York expend their ults very early. They don't get any kills, and they like to clap back, and then it's just a one fight, be one and done. And then they keep finding staggers, and New York just don't have a lot of life in them. And Atlanta cap pretty easily on Kings Row. And then we get the New York offense where Flora goes over to the Sombra, and after diving at the initial choke, right, Gang and Jin finds Venom, opens things up, and Atlanta have force the kite back, and that's where Hawk finds his remake cancel EMP. And like if Flora pops it just a little bit earlier, he cancels the remake entirely and they win the fight. But instead, Hawk gets the nastiest remake kill of the season, probably maybe of history. I'm not gonna go that far, but we'll see. Anyway, Atlanta, holds strong at the gate after they get capped by it because Nano Kellen goes in. They only need a tick, so it's pretty easy. But Atlanta hold at that gate, and then for some reason they give it up, and I'm not sure why. I think they were planning to like go behind New York and like dive him from the back, but they don't really go fast enough. And New York just kind of pushes support, and they also cap beat after one fight. But then it's not looking great for New York, and suddenly in the overtime, Flora kills four, to keep him alive, and he keeps going at the very end. He cannot do more, but unfortunately, no one else is playing the game of Overwatch 2 on New York. They're stuck playing something else. I don't know. Maybe they're playing the Snake game where you chase around the little mouse or whatever. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not playing Overwatch, man. So Atlanta kill Flora, and then they, by killing Flora, kill all of New York, and they win. Then we go to Circuit Royale, where Kai comes in for Speedily. So you get Venom playing the Tracer, which we saw Choi Se-Wan do that in their first match. And it doesn't work out on the defense, but once you get to B and C, it can be quite effective. But anyway, so both teams, just playing the Sigma, Widow, Bap, Zen, with New York opting for Yaki on the Genji versus Venom on the Tracer. And on the offense, Flora's still doing his thing, being very strong there. But the problem is New York, they use their ultimates and get no value all in a row. They use Flux, Atlanta back up. They use Window, Atlanta back up. They use Blade, and he gets slept and he dies. And then they're finally going with their ults because New York have nothing to stop them. So then Venom goes over to the Hanzo after, and Yaki goes to the Sojourn. And then Flux wins a fight for New York and wins a fight for Atlanta, and they get the seed pretty easily. And then they just slowly make their way through C. There's not a lot of fighting going on with the double snipers, just both teams waiting for an opportunity to find a pick. And then suddenly these snipers explode from Atlanta after Venom is able to control the pool high ground a bit, pressure the back line. and Atlanta just kind of cap. So then we go over to the offense where Venom's not able to do anything on the tracer on A, so New York cap that pretty easily. But then on the B, he's able to do a lot more easy access into the back line, forces attention away from the front line battle. So it's a lot easier for Atlanta to win that. However, he does die at one point, and after that, Atlanta can fully focus on the front line battle. They win that, and they get to C. But after Atlanta win a fight on C, they actually spawn camp them, which you don't see very often. You see it a bit more whenever you're playing the Sigma stuff, but not as much as you did last stage, for example. And Kai does a little bit of trolling, and he goes all the way to the B slopes for an angle, and he doesn't find anything. So New York push with that man advantage, but they aren't able to cap out because Yaki gets picked off early. And that's it for New York. So nothing crazy. Just Flora, had a pretty good match, I guess, overall. But standard New York stuff. A DPS can pop off, but doesn't really mean a lot. Then we go over to the Paris Eternal Lance and Dallas. This is a roll. This is an absolute 3-0 roll. Paris playing, their roster. Dallas playing Doha, Edison, Hanbin. They're just one-tricking the Zarya Reaper. It's really bad. It's really bad. Nepal, Paris actually put up a bit of a fight. Maybe I'm overstating a little bit. Paris do have a better performance than you would maybe expect, but they get 1 point, so I guess that's a dub, but it was into Zarya on Circuit Royale, so probably would hope you get a point there. I'd be concerned if they didn't. But Nepal is a 2-0 for Dallas. Both teams playing as Zarya Ana comp, with Dallas playing, the Reaper Sombra with the Lucio Ana, with Paris playing the Sojourn Tracer Brig instead. Sanctuary, 100 to 91. Dallas is super aggro, and Paris actually take advantage of that because they get a little too aggressive, and Wub's able to find a pick on Edison as they walk, and Paris win the fight when they don't have their Reaper. And then they do a pretty good job of holding on to the point. But unfortunately, whenever they do try to make an ultimate fight in set tempo, they don't actually get the value they need from them. So then Dallas flip the point, and from there, they just hold the choke. Dallas perma hold the choke, don't give him any space, and Chio has as many final blows as Paris does total after that first round, and he would actually have more final blows than Paris does in total at the end of the match. But that's kind of a, it's kind of a skewed statistic. Doesn't really mean a lot. On Shrine, at 147 for Dallas, with Wub going over to the Sombra, and Dallas's aggression is much more impactful off the start whenever Wub can't get a pick initially. And Karai's getting pressured down with hacks and with nades and everything like that. Wub does hit a nice EMP for Paris to flip, and then he's able to do a lot with Malthel on the back line. But after that, Paris lose right away to Dallas also. They get some big percentage there, a nice 47%, but nothing more. Pariso is a tragedy. The Zarya comp rolls the Diva comp. Paris don't get a single win on the offense. They get 2 ticks because back caps 2 ticks. But other than that, just nothing. Hanbin's going crazy on them. It's just a complete roll. And then on Dallas's offense, Edison pulls up on the Sombra, gets 2 kills with the 2 hacks, and they just win. Then we get the Circuit Rail, the tragedy that was the Zarya comp into the Sigma comp. Paris do start on the offense, and they get 1 fight win. Or not 1 fight win. They get a point win because Dallas holds close. They hold for a strong minute, but then Chio feeds, and they crumble. And then they're holding around the bend, and the Paris DPS don't get much space to find picks. And Hanbin's being so threatening that Cry can't really walk up either because he's getting high energy constantly. But finally, they find a pick on the fielder. Dallas crumble, and then that's it. Dallas just hold on the high ground. Paris try to gain some high ground control with the window, but Dallas just, they just run through it. They don't care about the window. And from there, they do get a win. 1 more win from a nice Bob placement from Dove, which splits the front line and the back line. But they come back with ults and they win on the recontest. And then on the offense, they just march. They just run it. They build nano. They walk. Edison does things on the Genji. And they just ult to win. It's just a roll. Then we get the most interesting match of the day. The Houston Outlaws playing against the San Francisco Shock. Ends up being a 3-1 for Houston with Shock kind of faltering. And they actually only played Mikey for the first map. But it was a roll. So Houston playing, Mayor Pelican, Dante, Lastro, Creative. Doge will be nowhere to be seen, which is very good for all Houston enjoyers everywhere because you don't want to see Doge. That was tragic gameplay from him earlier. But Shock, playing Sam, Proper, Mikey, Finn, and Violet for the first map. But then Kaluj would come in and he would win a map. So, you know what? We keep Kaluj win rate stays higher. Busan is a 2-0 for Houston, with Mecha Base being 178, and both teams rolling out on Arisa Zen Bap, with Shock opting for Hanzo Torbjorn and Houston opting for Ash Tracer. And Ash pays dividends in the first fight because they are able to kill Dante pretty easily, but then Mariko's huge with a big dynamite. Now there's no more supports. Mikey gets chipped down, and Houston get the first cap. But unfortunately for them, Proper's on the flank on the Torbjorn, puts down the turret, controls the entire point space, and they flip back. And from there, Shock do a really good job of zoning Houston away so they can't just walk into the point. And they use their dragon to zone them. They hit a nice molten core, so they can't walk anywhere. Eventually, Mare hits a bob onto the point, so this gives them some point pressure. Dante's able to run at that backline, just ignore Mikey completely, and they win the fight. And then it's Houston's turn to do the same thing. Now, they don't do it quite as hard, but they still kill Mikey early on entry, and Shock don't trigger the overtime, and they end up winning the first round. Then we go to downtown, which is 100-0 for Houston, with them playing Tracer, Echo, Diva, Zen, Ana. So we get Dante unlocking a new tank on the Diva. Actually, he unlocked a new tank before, too, so he said 4 total tanks. Huge for Dante. And then Shock playing the Sombra, Tracer, Balls, and Brig. And honestly, Pelican gets hacked and he dies on the Echo. And then he goes over to the Sombra, and it's great because Dante is just being very aggressive, diving past Monkey. It feels, or past Mikey rather, and Shock just haven't dived onto the Houston backline at all. And then there's a time where they do get to, where they live through an EMP, and then they EMP back, and Lastro comes out big with the Nano because they do a really good thing. Houston does a huge decision here where they split. They play the two supports very far away. So either one of them gets EMP'd, the other can either put a Nano boost or can Transcendence to save the other one. So very smart decision there where you have, like, you can't EMP both. So no matter what, you're not going to kill both unless you have very good coordination and crazy potential there. So they don't get there. But then it's a very scrappy fight to close out that overtime. Merit and Proper going toe-to-toe on the Tracer, but Merit ends up getting more help, and they secure out the map. Then we go over to King's Row, which is a 2-0, and Collusion... No, it's not. It's not a 2-0. Hold on. Okay, we go to King's Row, which is a 3-2 for Houston. Collusion comes in for Mikey, and Houston play... actually, we get a mirror almost with Tracer, Echo, Diva, Zen, Ana. The only difference is Shock is playing Hanzo on the defense. So Houston on their offense is basically Dante inting into Violet for high ground control on A, and it doesn't matter, even on B, he still ints in on Violet, because I guess he thinks that's worth trading. It kind of ends up being, because it doesn't matter that he gets traded out for Violet on A, they still get enough momentum going, and they don't have Violet anymore, so the Discord's not as free. And they end up holding on to, they end up winning A. And there's just super scrappy fights. It says crappy here. Super scrappy fights across the board. And the biggest consistent thing here is you get Houston initiating fight with the EMP, and maybe they don't completely clean it up, but Shock fight back. And then you always get Sam hitting another EMP later into the fight. But the coordination isn't as clean because you're in the middle of a scrappy fight, so it's not a clean engagement with the EMP. So sometimes it works out really well because you get the EMP, you get Proper being able to follow up on it, and sometimes he just isn't able to because it wasn't as coordinated, wasn't as set up. So the EMPs are much more hit and miss for Sam, whereas Pelican EMPs are a lot more surgical, a lot more precise, and Houston's much more able and prepared to capitalize on it. However, there is some other things there because of this playstyle from Sam. I don't know if it's a playstyle or what the goal is there, but this is what happens. If they are able to live through Pelican's EMP, then Sam's EMP gets way more value because they have all the members, and suddenly it's just way better for them because they don't have to worry about the Pelican EMP. And normally Houston would be way out of position because they were trying to capitalize on the EMP. So that's kind of like the dynamic that goes on throughout this entire match between Sam and Pelican on the Sombras. But in the end, I think that is safe to say that Pelican's EMPs got way more value, especially come the end there where he didn't have Sam on the other side. And it was very much a clean sweep. But anyway, Proper does some work, and he almost carries Houston, or he almost carries Shock to hold Houston on B. But he gets selected with creative, and Houston end up capping out, and then it's a barely OT hold from Shock. They do it just barely with the Lady EMP by Sam once again, with that dynamic of how the EMPs are working. Then we go over to the Shock offense where Pelican's on the Sombra, Sam's on the Sombra to start, and Proper's on the Genji. And Sam is really smart here. He waits for Merrick to show up because they're going to dive quick, and he hacks him, but he dies immediately. So suddenly the Houston dive is nowhere near as potent, and Shock cap A pretty handedly. And Sam is consistently EMPing after Pelican still. And again, if they survive the Houston EMP, they win pretty easily, and that's what happens on B. But then you get a scrappy fight at the end with Shock clutching up with Collusion's bomb, and it doesn't get any kills, but it does zone Houston off the point to get them into C. And again, scrappy fight on C. So many clutch plays on both sides. The mechanical skill that we see on display in this match, in this round specifically, huge from both sides. You get great moments from Finn where he keeps up, he gets nanoed, and he just runs in. You get Proper going crazy. On both sides, the backline's doing well, the DPS doing well. It's a very crazy play, and it's too hard to really explain what's going on. It's just mechanical play on mechanical play in a very scrappy fight. that ends up putting Shock on top to win out. Because Houston does not win this match. It says Houston, or they win the match, but they don't win that map. So that's where they get their win. Then we get Route 66, which is a 3-2 for Houston. Once again, playing the Tracer. I don't think they're playing Echo. I believe it is Tracer Sombra. Maybe I'm mistaken. They're playing a Tracer Sombra, Diva, Zen, Ana into the same thing, so it's a nice mirror on both sides. Houston cap A by getting a nice hack in Discord on the Violet. This time Dante doesn't end for him, but Pelican gets the job done. And then on B, Shock holds for quite a bit because they're able to trade backlines better. Merit is struggling to actually join the dive with Dante and Pelican onto the backline. I don't know if he's not like taking the time to set up properly or what's going on there, but he's not quite with them. Even if they use they use more ults than Shock. They still have nothing to show for it, and they lose to Shock just using support ults. Eventually, Houston finally get a good dive on supports, but then Sam's able to recontest with the EMP, and it looks really good for Shock. But Creative hits a clutch nano on the Merit so that he lives through the EMP. Pelican hits a counter EMP, one of the rare cases where Sam actually EMPs first. It doesn't work out, and Houston cap B. And then on C, there's not a lot going on, but then Violet hits a big nade and forces Last to a Drake, and from there the fight just bursts into action. Pelican kills both supports, and then Nano Kaluge goes and trades better. And it's really close. So finally we get overtime. They barely trigger OT, and they juggle very well between Dante and Pelican until they can get 100% of their team back. And then once they get there, they go in, kill the Shock supports. Pelican hits a nice EMP to close out, and Houston cap. So then we go over to Shock side, and they're just kind of trudging through, slowly but surely grinding it out. It's still very scrappy fights. I don't know what it is about Shock in this specific meta, but even against Washington, they were initiating very scrappy fights, not very precise. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that's a stylistic choice or if it just kind of ends up happening. But 2 matches in a row where Shock end up having a scrappy duel and they lose out both times overall. Anyway, Houston basically were just giving a ton of space on A until they couldn't anymore. On B, we get EMPs on both sides, but then Houston's able to stabilize with theirs better. And then again, this time we get EMPs on both sides, but it looks really good for Shock until Houston survived that one better too, because they zone off Violet, and Pelican kills Finn, so then they don't have any supports to follow up on it. Scrappy final fight. Last ends up killing 2, and Shock reset just in time for the overtime. I forget. We got through B at this point. We're on C. My apologies. But so on C, Lastro hits a crazy 180 right click on Sam after he EMPs, and he tries to trade out. He does trade out actually, but it was just a nuts right click from Lastro right there. And Merit ends up killing both supports, and then Shock get held right at the end. Then finally, New Queen Street, we get a 57-41 victory for Houston. Kilo comes in for Sam, but it's a huge error here because with Shock's comp, they're playing Ash Tracer, Diva, Abab, Zen. And Houston, the only difference is the Sombra. So this is a huge win condition that Houston have access to that Shock don't have the same access to. They don't have an EMP if they live out through the Pelican EMP. They don't have anything to really respond with because the Bob is just not as strong in this composition. Can you get hacked by the Sombra? And then you're basically useless. You can get slept by Ana, discorded and shot down. There's way too many like different variables, and Bob just isn't as strong in this meta. And the EMP, every single EMP is a fight win for Houston. So they're winning almost every other fight with how fast Pelican builds it. And while Kilo is very good at getting dynamites on the supports and having Proper clean them up, it's very good on the dive for Proper, but it's not consistent enough to get the fight wins. Shock do have the lead for the very beginning because Houston doesn't quite get that momentum going where they hit the EMP every other time, and the manual hacks aren't coming up quite fast enough to get the wins, but it's still very close. It's like 30-20 for the longest time. And in the end, it's still close. 57 is just at the checkpoint. So it's still a close match, but it also felt like Kaluge wasn't quite getting hacked when he needed to in these fights, where you think, oh, if Kaluge gets hacked there, he can't trade the backlines better, he can't peel for his backline better, and it didn't feel like Mara quite had that, or Pelican rather, quite had that down pat. But eventually they do turn that fight. They take the lead with 1 minute and 30 seconds left with the critical EMPs back to back to back almost. And then Shock switch over to the Zenbrig backline at the very end, but it just doesn't really work out. And again, Pelican with those EMPs were so critical for Houston getting the edge over Shock here. And then we go to the final match, the LA Gladiators against the Vancouver Titans, and they say they saw how fast Dallas rolled Paris, and they're like, maybe we can do that, and they roll Vancouver as well. So Glab's playing Kevster Happy, Rhino Shoe, and Funny Astro, with Vancouver playing Aspire King, Mirror, Masa, and Skyreaper. False, still nowhere to be seen, maybe for better at this point. And Nepal ends up being a 2-0 for the Gladiators, playing Genji Tracer, Doom, Ana, Lucio, with Vancouver playing Sojourn, Mei, Lucio, Lucio, Bap, and Orisa on Village. So it ends up being 100 to 54 for the Gladiators. So Vancouver right away, they go main right to point, and Reiner hits a punch on Sky Reaper off the map, and suddenly, that's a wrap. They don't have the Sky Reaper anymore. And then Gladiators continue to basically ignore Mirror entirely, and they just kill everyone around him. They do win a fight. Vancouver does because Reiner whiffs really hard on his dive going into the back line, and then Vancouver is able to run onto the Gladiators backline. They flip, but that's the only time they get any percentage on that point. And then over on Shrine, it's 100 to 0 with Reiner on the Winston. And Sky Reaper just on Spawn Die Simulator again. This time, if they manage to get a hack on the Mirror and then an anti, they try to burn him down. But as soon as he pops gold, they will switch targets to whoever. So I don't know what. It felt like they were doing that at least a few times in different fights. So I don't know what the goal was there, but it ends up working out pretty well. I don't know if they just wanted to get the gold out of him for later or what it was. Maybe try and force some resources away from the supports when they dive them after. But yeah, it works out. And Happy switches to Pharah in overtime just to get some final kills, which is always nice to see. A little bit of Happy Pharah. Then we get to Eichenwald, which is a 1-0 for the Glads. Skews come in for Funny Astro, and you get Glads playing still the Genji Sojourn Winston on a Brig, with Vancouver playing again the Orisa comp with Sojourn Tracer. And Vancouver's on their offense, they're just dive in and Gladiators just dive in and kill the backline, and then like Vancouver lose a fight. Mirror goes over to the Junker Queen, but it still doesn't really work out. Reiner comes back on the Doom at one point, and Happy gets a flank to win. It's just a roll. Just like Happy gets kills, Kev Sturdy the Blade gets kills. Mirror whiffs his Rampage in overtime, but actually could have won it probably because they had the rally going. But then he hits nothing with the Rampage, and so Gladiators just hold them out. And Vancouver get 94.5%, but that's not good enough against the Gladiators because they pull up with Genji, Sombra, Hog, and they just walk in and win. Reiner just said, I am on the Roadhog. He's there. Actually, his body was controlled by Numail Lich for a second there, so that's always dangerous stuff to see. Then we get Dorado, which is a 3-0 for the Gladiators because they get to attack first, so it couldn't be a 1-0. And they're playing it's still the Winston comp against Tracer, Sombra, Doom. And on the offense, Mirror's just getting perma-hacked until he dies. Vancouver lived long enough for him to get back, but then Glads just invest 4 ults, Skew walking in the Cape. And honestly, it's true domination from the Gladiators still in this 3-0, but it's not a speed run because Vancouver is able to stabilize with an EMP, but then Gladiators just kind of win and they slowly grind out a cap. And then again, Aspire stabilizes them on C, but still Gladiators, they cap out with their ults again. So it's not like a speed run, but it was very much like Gladiators are in firm control. They know what they're doing. They're rotating their ults well. And they give Vancouver like 2 fight wins that hold them for a bit. But it's still Gladiators consistently making progress throughout the map. And then on the Vancouver offense, Glads just hold the high ground the entire time. They try sending Mirror and the DPS into the backline at the very end and hope that they can maybe coordinate a dive onto the Gladiator supports, but it doesn't get anything. And Gladiators just hold on in a dominant fashion. Not even letting them pass the choke. So that's going to be the recap for the final day of the Countdown Cup Week 1. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like it, subscribe for more daily Warlord content, and deuces.